Hey everyone, so what this video is all about is about getting you ready for our assessments, right? So we have reached the end of the unit. These last couple lessons have just been about reviewing content and giving you some structure to prepare for the writing assignment. But our other assessment that is tied to this unit is something new. So we can't do the multiple choice test questions as we did in class because the test security stuff, it'd be easy to cheat. So there's a new system, and this video is going to be going over what the test looks like and what all the different resources involved are, so you know how to use them and where to get to them. Okay, so for reference, I'll be looking over to the side for most of this. I know you are there, but all my stuff is right over there. Here we go. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about what is the test. So there's two parts to the test. One is just the axes paragraph. You are used to this. I'm not going to go over it. It's posted already. It's the same thing we've done before. It gives you a template. It's got the prompt on there. You type it directly in there. You turn it into turnitin.com. It's graded with the same rubric at the same standards of what we have done in class. It's just on the topic that we had to study during distance learning. So I'm not going to go over that. If you have specific questions, you're welcome to email me about it, but I feel like there shouldn't be too much confusion there. I do anticipate confusion on the second part, though, because it is new. So this test is a reading test. It's about you selecting documents and then explaining them using all the different skills that we have learned since the beginning of our time together in January. So the way it's going to be working is you're going to be given a document menu. I've put 12 documents from this unit on there, so not all documents from the entire unit are there, but more like relevant and significant ones I have included. And then you'll be doing a bit of a free response approach to it to demonstrate our 5 key reading skills: sourcing, context, close reading, corroboration, and annotation. So there is a provided set of questions that you can just answer those. I think it's like 14 questions as you go through to try to get the job done, or you can write it as more of a free response approach. I will show you what both approaches look like in just a little bit. It's graded using the rubric that I'll show you in a little bit. And then also, if you get back your results after the test and you're not happy, you're allowed to revise it. So choose different documents, do it over again, choose the same documents and add more detail. Do what you need to do to try to improve your learning, and that will improve your score in the class as a result. Remember, we are credit, no credit, but if you're performing significantly under expectations, then that's the no credit path. So if you're in that boat, then you will have to revise. I will note too, because it's the one new thing about the axes paragraph, is that you can revise those. So once you get them back, if you want to rewrite it and resubmit it, I will regrade it. And if you improve your score, you'll get the better score. Okay, so I'm going to be going over a bunch of stuff on Google Classroom, which I know you're used to by now. So here we are. There's our unit right there at the top. And notice that here are your two tests. That's the axes paragraph. Click on it briefly. It gives you your template, the rubric, and turnitin.com, because that's where you are turningitin.com. All right, moving forward to the more interesting thing, this assessment. So you notice that there are a bunch of documents tied to it, and so I want to make sure we go through them bit by bit so you know what they are. So one thing to know is, what have I put here first? The rubric. So this is the rubric you will be graded on, and notice, our levels here are not meeting standard, approaching standard, meeting standard, and exceeding the standard. In terms of like the credit, no credit, pass, fail system for the class, it's somewhere between like the low end of approaching standard and the high end of not meeting standard. So realize that as long as you're approaching it like you're doing your best to try to get there with some success, then you will still pass the class. Okay, we've got our skills over here: sourcing, context, close reading, corroboration, and scroll annotation. So this details for you all the little attributes I'm looking for while grading to decide which level your skills are at. I'm not going to read through all this because you can read it yourself, but when it says like A here, A there, B, 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 C, 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 what that means is that all of those are like the same issue, and the way the wording change reflects how your skill demonstration has changed. So when you get this back, I will say like, well, on sourcing, you're doing fine on A and B, but it's C that you're having the issue with. So C is where you would have to revise it and change your strategies and change your behavior there. All right, so the rubric is tied to it directly to the assignment, so you can see that. One thing at the bottom, remember that I had to scroll to get there, is annotation. So I've added this to the rubric because it's a skill that we are always practicing in class, but it's a reading skill that I visibly need to see in your work in order to get there. So to the assignment as well, I've attached this text annotation strategies. Remember in class, these were those laminated orange sheets, and I gave you a copy of it as well on some colored piece of paper. When I'm grading how well you're annotating, I'm seeing how many strategies are you using? Are you using them consistently and effectively? So try out these strategies if you forget what they are, and that's the path to success on annotation. So the next thing I want to show you is that document menu that I told you all about. I can fit it in here. So what I provided for you again are 12 documents. There were more, but I whittled it down to 12. And there are some directions here that you can read through to get more details. The gist of it is that when you see these numbers here, like document 0602A, what that is telling you is that it is the document from Unit 6, Lesson 2, Document A, Unit, Lesson, Document. So what this means is that if you were a responsible student and did all the lessons leading up to this, just go look back at your work that you did for this, and it will inform how you complete the assessment. The thing about having to do this distance learning with this new assessment is it's essentially open resource. So let's be clear. Open resources that you made yourself, that's your authentic personal work, because Turnitin.com will catch stuff that is not your authentic personal work. So let's be clear about that. But this tells you how to get back to where the documents showed up in our lessons before. So if you've done the lessons thus far, even Hobo's Lullaby is in there. You can see that you will be drawing from these documents, and so you can reference back to your work you did leading up to this in order to essentially prepare for the work you have to do on the test. So what you do is on the test itself, you're going to choose one document to do the bulk of the work, as it says there. Annotating the document, explaining the sourcing, the context, and then pulling out some quotations for close reading. And that's the bulk of the work. The last part of the test is choosing an additional document, another one, from this menu, and then demonstrating the last skill, corroboration. I do note here, if you'd like to choose another document that's not on the menu, you can be, as I say, that customer who orders off the menu just because you know that there are other documents. But if you want to order off the menu, so to speak, you need to email me directly, tell me what document it is, let me see it, and I'll tell you whether or not you can use it or not. The reason for that is, what if you thought something was a document when it was really just like the source line explaining what the document was? It's not a primary source, so you need approval in order to use documents off the menu. Okay, so we've seen the menu, we've seen the rubric. What I want to show you now is what this test looks like, and I've gone through a lot of work to provide you what are called exemplars. Exemplar is kind of like the word example, where it means like, here's an example of it, but it's also kind of like the word exemplary. Exemplary means like the perfect example of what you could do. What I have made for you are exemplars of what work at level 4 exceeding the standard looks like, what work at level 3 meeting the standard looks like, what level 2 work looks like, approaching the standard, and then what level 1 work looks like. So I'll go over these very briefly, not in too much depth because you can go through them yourselves, but I made these to show you that if your work looks like this is about the score you're going to get. So be aware of that ahead of time. So let's start at the top. So this is like Mr. Chodola, like A+ star work, like me choosing a document and analyzing it with a college-educated brain. So, and that's level 4. Exceeding the standard. You're not just doing what you need to do to show you can do the skill, but you're going above and beyond the work, and ultimately that's really what should be like A+ work. So notice there's a lot of directions to guide you through this. You'll also notice that the directions, you can't edit them, right? what this does, and the reason it's that way, is so when you turn it into turnitin.com, it's not going to flag any of the stuff as being the same on your work because it's a picture, it's not the text. All right, so what I did is I followed the directions, and the first step is choosing your source from the menu and annotating it. Notice I give you step-by-step instructions for how to do that, but you essentially copy-paste the source from the menu into here, and then choose a few strategies to annotate it. If you're doing like A+, amazing work, what you're going to do is you're going to use the highlight feature right there to point out things in different colors that have different significance. What you're also going to use is what you can see over here with all these comments. So this is kind of like marginalia, as we call it in annotation, you writing stuff in the comment or in the comments in the margins. So to do this, what you do is you select something, or you just right click and you go to comment. See that little comment bubble there? Another way to get there is to select it and to hit that little add a comment button, or to go up here and add a comment. I bet it's under insert as well. Comment. So there's like 4 different ways to get there. But what happens when you do that is one of these little bubbles pops up, and then you can type your margin information in there. So it could be saying, oh, all right, New York Times, selected it. I pointed out, doing absolute amazing work, that this is relevant to sourcing. It tells us who the source is, and I even used the information I already knew to put it into the sourcing so I'd have that for reference when I work with it later on. Notice I did that the same for context, and then I also made them different colors. Using different colors is another useful annotation bit. What did I do here? Corroboration. So I noticed something that we had other sources that mentioned the Anti-Saloon League before. This is all stuff from the 1920s, so you can't use any of my work for your test. But I remember this coming up before, so I put my prior knowledge in what I remember. So you notice I have a purpose demonstrated here in my annotations, tying it back to the rubric and explaining it in my own words so I can use it later. Different colors mean different things. I even changed the spacing here in order to make more room for all that business. All right, so if you're doing annotation very well, you're going to have several annotations over here recognizing the different aspects of why you could be annotating it. Okay, you can even, as I do here, like ask questions to yourself, and then resolving those questions are things that you could do when you're actually doing the work. So step 1 is annotation, using multiple strategies. That's how you do well here. Next up is sourcing. Now notice over here, sourcing, all the questions, the guiding questions I provided you. These are also not editable, but what you're going to do is you're going to type your answers directly into the box over here. Choose a font of your choosing. I'm going to say it. I hate Comic Sans, so if you're frustrated and want to be mean to me, choose Comic Sans. So notice this is level 4 work. So what I've done is I've got extended answers for each of these, and what it kind of turns into is it looks like it's a free response question rather than I answered 1, I answered 2, I answered 3, I answered 4. So that's the strategy you want to do. So it's not just giving a quick, short, direct answer. It's elaborating and explaining, because if you can explain it, you probably know more about it and how to do the skill better. Okay, so there's sourcing. Same thing for context, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 little paragraphs, 4 questions there, but it reads like a unified kind of like little paragraph in different segments. Close reading. Notice what I did for close reading to do it really well is I bolded 3 different quotations. Note it says choose 3 details, but I integrated them into my writing. So if you can integrate your quotations into your explanation of the quotations, then that shows you have a greater understanding of the source, because you're not just saying, here is a quote, here is what it means. You are integrating it and showing you know how to use it. So that's why that is like exceeding the standard. And now we're going to move forward to something else. So remember, I said in the directions earlier that you choose one source and you do all of these skills on that one chosen source, completely your choice from the options of 12. What you then do though is you choose another source from that menu, you copy paste it here, and then in the questions below, There's questions about corroboration. So ways in which the first document you analyzed and this new document you chose line up in ways they're similar or different to each other. Like I said, if you're doing really good, like excellent above and beyond work here, it's going to look like a free response where you're answering the questions, but in greater detail and explaining them. All right, that's the test. When you're done, you submit it to turnitin.com where the assignment will be posted. So just like you've done for the Axes paragraph, there'll just be a different assignment there that has it for, what are we calling this? The source analysis assessment. Now, that is like the amazing, like Mr. Chodola has a master's degree work. What we're dealing with next, though, is just like, are you doing what you should be? So I'm not going to go through this in detail, but if you look at this, put the same source there, notice there are fewer annotations, there are not as many colors, but you're still showing that you can annotate a text and you know how to use different methods on the same text. So that's meeting the standard. Also meeting the standard is, notice that this group of answers for sourcing is you just numbered in and answered it, but all the answers are accurate and relevant. They answer the question, they don't explain it in detail, but that's still meeting the standard. That's a 3 out of 4 because you are correct and you are following the strategies in order to get it done. So notice context, same thing, less detail, but everything is still correct. Close reading, notice you answered the questions one by one and only chose 2 details instead of 3. So if you can choose 3 or more, like, oh my God, you're finding all this really cool stuff. But if you only can find 2, then you're not seeing why the entire document is relevant. So that's why it's a level 3 instead of a level 4. Also notice it's like, here's the quote and here's what it means, here's the quote, here's what it means, rather than the work all sort of like interwoven with each other. Corroboration, source is still there like the one from last time. And again, answering it 1, 2, 3, 4, bing, bang, boom. So remember, you can follow and just answer the questions directly. If that's what you need to do, you're still going to meet the standards if your answers are relevant and correct and all that business. It's not going to go above and beyond, but also we're on a credit, no credit system. So is going above and beyond what we need to do? Probably not, but I know some of you are extra like me, so you will. Okay, let's go one scale down to approaching the standard. So what this means is you're on the right track, but you might have some wrong answers in there or just not providing me enough information to be able to tell if you fully understand things or not. Right? So what do we have here? The same source. Notice it's annotated and there are some comments, but if you looked at those comments there before, they were in detail. They were pointing out like, here, this is sourcing and here's why. This person said, this is the source. They did not like alcohol. Prohibition was happening. Alcohol is poison. So those are annotations, but they are not especially helpful for understanding the source at the end of the day. Okay, so this is approaching the standard because you're doing what you should be doing, but you need to improve your skills to do it better. All right. Notice next up, same thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, bing, bang, boom. But notice the answers are even shorter. They are correct, but they are not giving me enough detail for me to truly understand if you understand what you're talking about or not. Right? Same thing for context. Notice here for close reading, only 1 quotation. So if you can only pull out 1 relevant quotation, then again, you're not seeing how so much more of the source is important and relevant, so you don't really understand how to do close reading. Right? Corroboration, a second source is still provided, which is a key thing to do. But if we were to look at these questions, they're all like very vague. So just saying like they were made 3 years apart, so they're in the same context, not really giving reasoning for why something would be more reliable or not, and having a little bit of misleading information in there. So the key to corroboration is that you do choose a second source, and to get at least a 2, you need to try. So you need to try to say, here's what I think is going on, and here is how I think they are reasonably connected. Even if you're wrong in what you think the connections are, you'll still get a 2. Moving down to 1, this is where I don't suspect many people will get, but this is like the you are doing everything wrong way, right? So it's why it's clearly not meeting the standard. So here's what this person, me still, did for annotation. I put the word source. That's not helpful. and I just made it a rainbow. Now, maybe my rainbow with all those different colors indicated different things, but to me, the teacher, it looks like you said I have to annotate, so I'm just going to make a pretty color sequence. So that is not meeting the standard because there's really no rhyme or reason to what you're doing, and there's no commentary to really show me what your thinking is. Notice, we're on to sourcing here for level 1. Didn't even number what they are, and just gave me short, really lacking detail answers here. So how reliable is the author? He has a bias against alcohol. He is unreliable. Doesn't explain how we know that's true or why being against alcohol means you are an unreliable person. So these are all attempts to answer the question, but either they are outright wrong or they're down the wrong path, so they're not providing sufficient information, which is suggesting you're really not meeting the standard of work. Notice for context, there were 4 questions, and I only answered 3 of them. This one, look at this. Does this era have a name? It is from the 1920s. Cool, you can read it. It said the date was 1922, right? So this stuff is kind of irrelevant, and this one is so completely vague that it doesn't even mean anything. So notice this is why it's bottom of the barrel work. Close reading provided a quotation, but didn't say what any of it means, how it ties into the author's point of view, and also it's just a really long quotation. I'm looking for you to have shorter, more concise quotations to show that you know what are the most relevant parts of the source, not just copy pasting half the source into the close reading area. Corroboration, well, it has a source line, but the cartoon isn't there, and then didn't even fill it out. So corroboration is kind of the more difficult of all the skills. I'd say even the most difficult. So it's one where you have to understand the first source, choose a second source, kind of understand it in your head, and then find where they match up. So essentially, to get a 1 on corroboration, you have to not provide a second source. So it's kind of it has the lowest standard for 1 because it's more difficult to do it right once you're actually doing it. Okay, so I showed you examples of bottom of the barrel work, not meeting the standard, approaching the standard, so you're doing most things right, but you need to improve a bit in order to actually show you can meet the standard, and then when you want to be super extra like me, you can do this type of business there. All right, so that's how all of that works. You will be submitting it to turnitin.com, typing your answers directly into the copy of this that is blank and has been provided for you, and then I will grade it directly on there, send it back to you. If you want to revise it, you can. Okay, so the dates here are, by the way, it's posting on Friday, and then I will start grading them on Tuesday. That's it. So hopefully that helped you understand a bit more of what these tests are like. Axes paragraph should have been fairly clear already, but this new test format, it's a new format. You haven't used it before, so there's going to be maybe a learning curve there to figure out how to do it. Remember, email me if you have questions. I will answer them directly because I know this is important since it's a new thing. So please don't hesitate to do that, or fill out the office hours form, and then we can meet. We can talk over Google Meet in order for me to guide you over the process of submitting stuff, completing the work. I'm happy to do that as well. All right, folks, that is it. So use this to guide your thinking on the test. Watch it again if you need to, and I hope it was helpful. I think it was, but I'm just me. All right, folks, I'll see you later. Bye.